Welcome to the Changing Channels podcast, brought to you by the Mile High Flood District and the Learning Community Advisory Council.
Awesome. Welcome to the LCAC podcast on mentorship. I am your host, Drew Roberts from the Mile High Flood District, and I'm joined today by Emily Villines and Claire Paschke from Calibre Engineering and from Kimley-Horn.
Good morning.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, of course, happy to be here. I thought that an interesting way to start this would be just a quick little easy question of who was your first mentor and how did that relationship come to be? Maybe we'll start with Emily.
That's a great question.
Yeah. This might be an unusual answer, but I feel like my first mentor was my grandmother.
Really?
So she was a rodeo princess. She was an only child. She played basketball. She was such a fiery woman.
Yeah.
And she had big dreams, grew up on a farm, and then moved out here and had a job and kids and all that stuff. And I went through a rebellious phase, as many kids do, in their high school, adolescent years.
What is rebellion from a rodeo princess?
I don't know. She was fiery, let me tell you.
Yeah.
She just flew to her own song and did what she wanted to do and didn't want to be on a farm. That was her biggest goal. I don't want to live on a farm my whole life. I want to go live in a city and do what I want to do. My grandfather owned partial ownership of a plane, so he would fly his kids and his wife to different places of the country, and so she was definitely kind of a rebel. So she gave me that streak of believing in myself, and gave me one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, which was, Emily, you just have to do what you're going to do, and everyone else will catch up or they won't.
And I loved
that. Yeah, that was my favorite piece of advice. So she was my first mentor. I think professionally, my first mentor was probably Greg Murphy at our company, who's also my dad. But my family, we're a strong family.
I love it.
But yeah, I was at a big engineering firm before I came on to Calibre and found myself pigeonholed into a role that wasn't great for me, and I wasn't passionate about it, and I wasn't going to grow.
Yeah.
So I came over to Calibre and started the marketing department where there was nothing and nobody. And so he lifted me up and gave me opportunity to do things that we had never done before, and believed in me and let me convince him to do things that the other companies hadn't done. And so that really gave me confidence too.
It's funny. That's kind of both of your mentors there seemed like the through line was that they believed in you, gave you confidence. Like they were very uplifting mentors.
Yes.
It seems maybe it's something that you kind of gravitate towards, or it's something that you respond really well to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do. Which I don't know what that says about my just innate confidence. But yeah, it does. And I think they focused on the big picture, right? The big things that I wanted to or could achieve instead of the minutia of what I was doing in any given moment. And that was also really uplifting because it gave me the vision to go where I wanted to go without focusing on like the little things.
They were like lifting you up from the why perspective, not just the what.
Yes.
That wasn't what you were doing, it's the why and where it could go.
Exactly.
And sometimes I think that's what you need. Like you need a cheerleader who can just believe in you and trust that whatever you choose to do with your career, with your life, like you'll get it done.
Yeah.
So that's really special.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to say, especially when you're young, but I find that true even today. Like there are times where I need to be uplifted and reminded what I'm capable of.
Yes.
Because everybody is confronted with those moments of lack of confidence. And yeah, it's wonderful. That's true.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Claire?
So similarly, I think my mom was probably my first, real mentor that I can remember. She always was just such a positive force and still is in my life, telling me I can do whatever it is I want to do, be it engineering, I wasn't super sure before I started college, like what I wanted to do with my life. I think like most, kids in high school. And my mom looked at me and she was like, whatever you do, you will do a great job. So I think you need to pick whatever you're passionate about. I think you need to pick something that's really going to challenge you, that you will feel challenged, you won't get bored. And so I just picked environmental engineering. I was like, okay, we'll try it. We'll see how it goes. And I ended up loving it. So I will always be super grateful for her to kind of like pushing me in that role and encouraging me that, I could do this. And then I would say after that, the next mentor that kind of comes to mind would be my really good friend Teresa, who I met at Colorado State. We actually were part of the like peer mentoring group through the College of Engineering there. And I think like many first year students, when especially you're moving from maybe out of state or to a new school, it can be really scary and challenging, especially a lot of the classes. And I remember like meeting with her and just being like, okay, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Like, I don't feel super confident. I don't know if I love, X, Y, and Z class. And she was so, so, so helpful. And she just looked at me and she was like, again, you can do this, you can do hard things. And as long as you're passionate about it, you should stick with it. So yeah, forever grateful to both of those wonderful ladies.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, but both of your answers were like very similar, and like it seems like you have like a style of mentor that really kind of speaks to you.
Totally.
That's true.
And you kind of touched on this just a second ago, but you mentioned, even now you like mentors that kind of like lift you up. And so that kind of led me to a question of how has the type of mentor that you looked for changed from when you were like, very young to like where you are now? Has it stylistically evolved or has it stayed the same?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think for me, it has evolved somewhat. I think when I was younger, similar to what Claire was just saying, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So that mentoring was a little bit more directional. And now it's more uplifting and confidence building. Because I know where I want to go.
Yeah.
There are just times where I'm not sure that I can achieve those things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar, but shifted just a little bit away from directional and more towards confidence building.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I would say for me, it's pretty consistent. I feel like I always respond best and interact best with mentors who I can be vulnerable with and I feel comfortable around. I feel like I have had mentors in my life who are awesome, but that tough love element of, they are like this wonderful, respected person, but if they feel too scary or too intimidating to talk to on a daily basis or to kind of reveal those insecurities, it's like I feel like I can't open up as much. So I'm definitely drawn to people who are very warm and encouraging, but also are willing to kind of have those challenging conversations as well.
That's interesting because I feel somewhat the opposite of like I need a mentor to like push me, and to keep me going and like to like set like higher and higher goals for me. Like that to me is like a really helpful mentor.
What does it look like to push you?
There's one of my favorite kind of anecdotes. Have you seen? It's this guy Randy Pausch. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
He did this thing called the last lecture. The concept of it is, if you could have one last lecture before you died, what would it be? And when he gives this, he has terminal cancer. And he tells a bunch of anecdotes and stories and such throughout the presentation. But the one that always stuck out to me is he starts this new class. And it's never been done before. It's cutting edge, like VR at the time. And he assigns, all this class into different groups, and he assigns them all like a task, and he gives them like 2 weeks to do it. And he gives them very, very like broad instruction, no specifics at all. And they come back and they give him the submittals, and he's just kind of blown away by them. And so he calls his mentor, Andy Van Dam. And he calls Andy and he says, Andy, I just gave these kids an assignment that they finished in 2 weeks. And if I had given them the whole semester, I would have given them all A's.
Right.
What do I do?
Yeah.
And Andy turns to him and he says, well, obviously, you don't know where the bar should be set, and you're only doing them a disservice by setting it anywhere. And so he goes back to class the next day and he says, guys, that was good, but I know you can do better. And so I always think of that story. Like that to me is like a really good example of like, it's not so much that someone can like will set a goal or, will say like, this is your bar. This is the place you need to be. But more of like, I know that there's more that you can do. I know that there, we can go further. We can go further. I don't know where that is. You don't know where that is, but there's more there.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Totally.
Another thing that I've kind of been curious about, and this is, I think, coming much more into the forefront now as technology is advancing and just the way that we interact with each other, remote work, compared to, when everybody was in the office. But how does mentorship look like now when, you have people all over the place, you might not be in the office, you might not be spending the same amount of time together. How do you make sure that you are a mentor to those beneath you who don't have, maybe as much access to you as they might have in the past?
That's a great question. I feel like it all comes down to being more intentional. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned from, working with people and, being a mentor and a protege, kind of being on both sides of the coin, like if you don't set time aside and like make sure these relationships are a priority, especially now, right, in a more virtual age where maybe, it's not just talking to someone in person, it's setting up a virtual coffee or setting up like a Teams meeting once a week just to check in on somebody. I think it's all about intention. And I think just making sure that people feel like they're being valued and prioritized, even though, you might not be talking with them, interacting with them every day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when Claire and I started the CASFAM Mentor Protege program, I tried twice to get the ball rolling on that. And the first time was before COVID. And I really went into that goal with my own desire to make it happen. But this time around, I heard so much interest in having mentor-protege relationships. Like it was coming to me from every angle. Every mentor that I talked to, every protege that I talked to, people wanted a program and wanted more formalized relationships for mentoring and protege situations. So I feel like what I have learned is that being in a more virtual age has led people to want more of that formalized relationship.
Totally.
More than we used to hear about before. And I think when I've had conversations with the mentors who grew up in this industry and in this field, what they talk about a lot was that there was a lot more opportunity for informal mentoring. Like they talk about the drive between meetings and quick plans review before you submit it. And things that are happening more virtually now, either virtual meetings or you're just sending virtual comments or whatever it might be. So to me, that's been one of the lessons that I've taken away in this sort of mentor-protege era that Claire and I are going through, is there's a lot more need and desire for it, and it's being intentional and giving people a platform to reach out to people that they wouldn't have access to before.
Absolutely.
Do you think you would change the way that you had meetings, had like different, work interactions based on a desire to have more mentorship? Like, would you have more in-person meetings for the sake of, I have somebody that I'm trying to mentor and I'm trying to build up and this is important?
Yeah, I think for me, absolutely. And that's also been something that I have found challenging, and I'm curious if other people have had the same experience. But it feels like since COVID, people want to meet more virtually. And it's harder to get people out to a meeting than it used to be before COVID. So I'm very much wanting to meet in person. My team meets in person every week. And Claire and I meet in person too. But it does feel more challenging, especially in larger groups of people, to get everybody together in person.
I think so too. And I also just think being in person has so much value. I think a lot of times people can be more reserved virtually and they might not speak up or ask as many questions if they're, chatting over Teams. Especially like if you're delegating a task maybe to somebody and, you can just message them quickly like, are you doing okay? If you call them or, even go up to their desk and physically have that interaction of like, hey, how's it going? Do you need anything? Do you have any questions? I mean, 9 times out of 10, I feel like people will have something to say or, have a question for you versus like if you're messaging online, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm fine. Like, don't worry about it. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely value.
When I started here, I started just a few weeks before COVID. And so I only knew one person, which was Dave. And I remember one day, it was like a couple months into working here, I had some question. He's like, you should call whoever, yada, yada. And I said to myself, I was like, that's something I'm never going to do. There is no chance in the world I cold call somebody I don't know out of the blue. You know. And that's something that I've kind of been toying with the back of my head of like, to me, virtual versus in person, like if you're virtual, like you can maintain whatever, like the size of your pipe, to use a metaphor that we're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
Like your communication pipeline can be maintained, but it can't be expanded. And so with people that you have good relationships with people that you're familiar with, et cetera, it's really easy to maintain these things, and it does become kind of natural. But if there's like new faces, new people, or if there's people on your team who are not familiar with these settings, then it can be a lot harder for them to get that same amount of growth because they don't have any, that kind of channel there. So it can be really hard to just like, I just wouldn't cold call somebody just to chat.
Right.
I'm curious about that because I hear that often. And when we talk about relationship building in our industry, there's definitely a fear around reaching out to people that you don't know.
Right.
But it's something that can be so beneficial from the relationship building perspective.
Totally.
So have you overcome that? Or have you thought about ways to overcome this fear around cold calling?
I think I guess it depends on like what the thing is. Like for me, like, and if somebody like Teams called me and like just to chat, I'd be like, hey man, like I've got
I'm
a busy day.
I have things to do. Sorry.
But I would happily spend, like, if somebody told me, like, hey, like, had some questions, do you have time to, like, grab coffee and meet up? That I would happily do without any thoughts or questions or reservations.
Right.
So I don't know what that says or what that means, but I definitely know that, for me, then on the flip side, that I wouldn't cold call someone, but I would feel comfortable reaching out and be like, hey, like, wanted to pick your brain on this. Can we sit down? Do you have 30 minutes to grab coffee or something and sit down and chat through? And I found that to be, I think I'm happier, and I like to imagine they're happier too.
Yeah. It's the why. Have a why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you think you would feel that way, or do you feel that way if somebody just stops by your office or your cube?
Oh, I love
swings by real quick and says hi.
I love people swinging by.
So that's different from somebody calling you on Teams.
Yeah.
Just saying, hey, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think it probably has something to do with like the amount, like the expectation of time and the amount of, like uptake. Like it's really easy to swing by. Hey, you got a couple minutes to sure chat and whatever. All right, see ya. As opposed to like scheduling a time for a call and fitting it within,
Right.
Is my read of it, but I'm just here.
That's interesting. I like that.
I also feel like it maybe comes from a place of experience too.
That's interesting.
Because I remember, straight out of school when I first started working, I was so nervous just to like be in a big office, even in person, and talking to all these people and meeting all these people in the elevator was a little bit overwhelming at first. And I remember like kind of, this is going to sound silly, but giving myself a pep talk like, in the car before walking in, like, I'm going to meet a lot of people today and it's going to be great. And, I can do this. I'm awesome. Whatever. That internal monologue. And I feel like it's harder to kind of have that like at home when you're online and hype yourself up so much for Teams calls necessarily. But now, right, like a couple years into my career, it's easier. So I wonder, Drew, like, do you think part of it has to do with, you've had a couple more years under your belt, like you have more experience maybe cold calling or talking with people in person?
It's a good question. I think there's definitely a yes there, right?
Yeah,
like there's definitely to what degree, but there's definitely a yes there. As I was kind of thinking about your question, I almost wonder, to me, it might more be, there's the amount of attention that you're giving when you're in person.
Yeah.
Because like if you're looking at the screen, you're calling somebody, like, you can get some information, but it's hard to like have like a natural conversation. There's this slight delay that makes that old, oh no, you, oh no, you, oh no, you.
First.
Yeah. And there's like all of these other things that are like competing for your attention. And so when you're having like these like, very in-person one-on-one conversations, one-on-one conversations, like your attention is locked in, you're totally focused, and you can really, I think, lean a lot more for it. It becomes a much more engaging experience for everybody that you kind of lack, I think, there. Not to say that, I'm not someone who thinks that, there's no value in, virtual meeting or anything like that. I just think that for me, a healthy relationship is probably a mix.
Yeah.
And I probably need to start the relationship in person just to build a bit of trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think when I reflect on you saying there's a yes there.
Yeah.
There's a yes to that question.
Yeah.
I think relationship building is difficult in the adult space.
Yeah.
Because you don't have we're just going to go play on the playground.
Yeah.
Or we are all here to play soccer.
Right.
It's more difficult when you get into the adult arena.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many of us who are introverts, it takes the practice of connection in order to be more comfortable.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. So I think there is something there to like the little meetings that you have in the elevator or in the stairwell or popping your head into somebody's cube. The more that you do that, the easier it becomes. And obviously, the more you're in your career, the more opportunities you have to do it.
Yeah, I think that's true with anything. Of like, you can't do a thing, so many times and not just become more comfortable at it.
True.
Let alone better, right?
Right.
If you spend enough time in a space doing a thing, like you just will get more comfortable with it. It just will become easier. There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great piece of advice. Practice.
Practice.
Practice,
Things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I like that. Practice the things that make you uncomfortable. Is there a facet of, either how somebody has mentored you, or have you been a mentor that has been something that made you uncomfortable, that kind of like pushed you and like, ooh, either my mentee needs, feedback this way and I'm not comfortable doing that, or anything in kind of those lines?
Yeah. So I've done several of these mentor protege programs before. And in some cases, you have some sort of meeting and everybody gets to know each other, and then you pair based on, aura, vibe, whatever, interests.
Yeah.
And then there's some situations where they just pair you with somebody. And I have found it more difficult to align with somebody that I'm just matched with.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit more uncomfortable because you have to spend the time up front getting to know that person and trying to find those common lines, where in a more a situation where you've had more introductory time, it's a little more natural.
Yeah.
And you can match with somebody who maybe feels more aligned with how you handle things. So that has put me into an uncomfortable situation before, like being matched with somebody that I don't really know, and I'm trying to figure out how are we going to align, and how do you need to be mentored. And I think so often what I found with proteges is we know that we need to grow, but we don't always know where we need to grow.
Yeah.
And that is harder to find with a protege that I haven't had more space and time to get to know beforehand.
Absolutely.
Because you have to jump into these super vulnerable conversations with no groundwork. So that has really pushed my comfort level in terms of relationships and being vulnerable and learning how to navigate those waters of maybe I don't know this person as well. But I'm going to know them by the end of this conversation, even if they, stare at me with a blank stare and they're really uncomfortable with my super vulnerable question. That's been an interesting situation that's forced me to grow.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And I think going off of that too, I think when both people in the relationship aren't as invested, or maybe like if there's one person who's super excited, can't wait to have a mentor and, be guided and have these conversations. And then the other side, maybe they're too busy or just not as excited to be a part of the relationship and can't find time to meet, or kind of similarly like have those types of conversations and ask those questions can be challenging. And it's tough, I feel like, especially when it's like a matched program, right? Like you're putting these two people together, hoping for the best, right? Like hopefully it's a wonderful relationship and they both grow. But if one person isn't feeling it and then starts to maybe cancel coffee meetups or, just isn't putting in enough time or effort to grow the relationship, then you really feel for the other person, because it's like, well, it's like any relationship. It can't be one-sided.
It's interesting because to me that kind of brings up like a question of the logistics of mentorship, but then also like the pace of mentorship, because, I think I have different mentors and different people in my life that I interact with at a different pace. And the ones that you see daily, that maybe are in your office or you work together, whether you see for some reason, you'll get a different type of mentorship from them than you will from somebody who you might see like a couple times a year. And I'm just curious, like, how have you found, like, how do you kind of, how do you find time with somebody for mentorship at both levels, at the kind of, high intensity and at the low frequency?
It's a great question.
Yeah, I think to Claire's point, it's about commitment.
Yeah.
So both people have to be similarly committed. And if you come to realize you're not both similarly committed, then maybe it's not a good match for whatever frequency you need at this point.
Yeah.
What I've also found to be helpful is knowing which mentors in my life have which communication styles. So I have a mentor who's very blunt and very to the point.
Right.
And her I can meet with like twice a year.
Yeah.
And it's good because I get what I need.
Yeah.
She knows exactly what to ask me and how to uplift me. And I don't have to have more of those frequent conversations. But it's just a personality thing. Like I know what I'm going to get from her when we meet. And that doesn't mean that she's any more or less valuable than somebody I meet with more frequently. It's just recognizing where somebody is and how they give to you.
I'm gonna push you a little bit right there.
Yeah.
Because you said that both parties need to have kind of a matched amount of commitment. But something that I found in my life, and I think maybe tell me if I'm wrong, is that especially when it's my mentors who I meet with less frequently or who at a much different level of their career, the onus is on me to to schedule and to make this happen, and it requires at a higher level of commitment for me than it does from them. Not that they're unhappy to do it, but that's how I found it to be. So I just want to push you a little there on.
No, I think that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and sort of a great thing to remember is that it's not always 50-50 in terms of who's giving what to the relationship. But it's recognizing that the ownership might be on one person or another to forward that relationship.
Yeah.
I think what I mean in terms of commitment is not necessarily the logistical commitment of making it happen, but the vulnerability, the follow through piece of it. But I totally agree with you, and that's such a good point. Like there's proteges that I have in my life that they have to be the ones scheduling the meeting, not because I don't want to meet with them or because I don't care, but because I'm busy and life gets ahead of you, and before you know it, it's been 2 years. So I think that's such a wonderful point and a really good thing to encourage people, either if you're a mentor or you're a protege. Don't be afraid to be the one to reach out.
Yeah.
People are busy, and it doesn't mean that they don't care for you or want to help. They're just busy.
Yeah.
And that's all it comes down to.
And I think like going off of that too, from a protege perspective, I think it's okay to have maybe some internal goals of what you want to get out of the mentorship relationship. I think sometimes there can be a struggle if those expectations or personal needs aren't defined early on. What are you looking for? Do you need help with, relationship advice or, career growth? Like, what do you want to get out of the relationship? Because I think it's hard sometimes, especially if a mentor doesn't know you as well, to kind of ask those more vulnerable, deep questions right off the bat. And then I think there can be this gap of like, oh, okay, well, we got coffee, but we didn't really talk about what I thought or what I wanted us to talk about. So I think it's okay to speak them, to not speak them, but just to have those kind of goals of what you want to get out of the partnership.
So you both have mentioned vulnerability quite a bit here, and I kind of want to probe into that a little more because, I think if I had just, from the top of my head, talked about mentorship, maybe this is a typical engineer, but would come at it from maybe a bit more of a technical side of like, there are kind of like the vulnerability, the emotional parts of it, especially with the human interactions, but also there's like a technical aspect of it, like how do I do, this is a role I want to grow into. What are the skills that I need? How do I develop this? And I'm curious to see how you kind of see those two things interact. Am I missing the boat where, it's in there, or is there some interaction that you found interesting about that?
So I think you almost hit the nail on the head when you say, you want to grow, right? In tech, you want to have these technical skills. You maybe want to grow into this one role that you see a lot of value in. And I think when you have those interactions and those conversations with your mentors, I think being open and honest about what you want is being vulnerable and saying, here's where I am. Here are the areas where I need to grow and I need to maybe work on to get me to a place where I'm ready and I would feel comfortable and confident in the future doing this role. I think that's vulnerability.
There's a vulnerability in just asking.
Yes,
saying,
absolutely.
I want this.
Yes, I want this. I'm here and I need to grow X, Y, and Z skills to get to where I want to be. Yeah.
I also think it's about telling the stories that help your mentor realize where your gaps might be.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have a vision of what we want to achieve, either technically or just professionally. But we don't really know what it is that we're missing. We can just
Yes.
tell that we're having a hard time getting there.
Yeah.
So being able to say, like, here's a story of where I failed or I struggled or I didn't know the answer and I didn't know who to ask, that is really putting oneself in a super vulnerable space, because we all want to look like we're professional. We all want to look like we're competent.
And I think there's so much value in those vulnerable conversations, because I feel like 9 times out of 10 when I have had the courage to speak up about, I don't feel great about this aspect of where I am, or, you know, about my skill set right now, your mentor can come back and they probably have a similar experience, or they felt, you know, similarly either previously or maybe they still do.
Yeah.
And that connection is huge and super beneficial, I think.
So I'm curious, like for me, I often gravitate towards like mentors who push me and challenge me and are like hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And you know, there's obviously a fine line between, you know, accountability and just, you know, beating someone up for no reason. And I've had both. But I'm curious to see, like, how have you found, because everybody is at a different range, how have you kind of found that balance between, you know, being pushed and being held accountable, but also not in a way that's, you know, tearing you down? Either someone who's done it to you, or how you've, you know, done that with a mentor or mentee. Protege.
Yeah, I will say I am a very sensitive person. So I would have a hard time with a mentor that just pushed me the way that you're talking about. And I think what I've learned is that it is easier for me to accept the things that I need to work on if it is my own realization, as opposed to if the mentor is telling me you're weak in this, or you need to work on this, or here's where whatever. And I think that is where a really skilled mentor comes in, because they can see it and they know how to ask questions to help you realize those gaps yourself. And for me, that's been a huge realization in this journey. How to ask those questions to allow the person to come to their own conclusions rather than telling them what I think their conclusion should be.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when you were saying that, you started making me think about, you know, who were the mentors in my life and kind of, you know, how are they doing this? And I thought back to my AP Calculus teacher, Mrs. Spear, who is just the most wonderful woman in the world.
If you're listening, Miss
If you're listening, Miss Spear, shout out Miss Spear. But to a very real degree, that changed my life, because So in high school, I was in all honors classes, and I was doing great in all of them except for math, where I was working so hard, and I was like barely like getting like C's and B's.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom came to me and she's like, "Hey, maybe you should drop honors math." And because I was a little twerp, I signed up for AP Calculus. But I got extremely lucky in doing that, because, you know, one of my first classes with Mrs. Spear, I, you know, took a test, did her homework, you know, something, and submitted it, and she held me after class. And she was like, "Drew, you're too smart to be doing things like this." And she's like, "You, obviously, I've seen you work in class, you know, everything, like, you obviously can do this, and you're failing to, like, you know, give it the attention that it needs, the focus, like, you need to write out your work, you need to do all these things, like, you can do this. This is not your standard." And that for me, like, just totally clicked. And I'm gonna write out an A in AP Calculus, and I proceed. Mrs. Spear is the one who convinced me and told me that I should be an engineer.
That's awesome.
So that's, I mean, it's kind of that kind of thin line of, it wasn't that she was on my case, just like, get me. But it was more that she was like, "I know that your standard is not here, and I will not let you, you know, self-sabotage. If you can't do it, that's fine, but like, I won't let you, you know, not live up to where I know you can be."
Yeah. It's that blend of confidence building with self-realization.
Totally.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I've had a similar experience that just reminded me of this mentor that I had in college. One of my favorite English professors, because I got my degree in English. I'm different from the others at the table, but he was wonderful, and I took so many classes with him.
Yeah.
And I think I had a vision of who I thought that I was.
Absolutely.
And we were doing sort of an overview of what I wanted to do in my career. And he said something about, you can be a little prickly. And I was like, prickly? And I remember being like shocked that he would say that. But then I realized I can be a little bit prickly. Like I can be very competitive.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't like if somebody says something bad about my team or somebody that I care about. And I can be a little bit like, nope.
Yeah.
And so that helped me realize something about myself that I didn't know, that nobody had ever told me before, and has actually given me strength to achieve some of the things that I've achieved today, because I realized I don't have to be this way that I perceive myself. I can be a little bit prickly if I need to, or whatever that word is now in my life, and that's okay. And it's going to push me to be who I want to be and who I need to be in my life.
But the awareness of it then lets you make a conscious choice, as opposed to like it's just happening in the subconscious.
And I think there's a level of trust too, because I think you need to trust that that feedback you're getting is for your benefit in the long run, which I think sometimes, you get feedback from a bunch of different people throughout your life, right? And it's up to you to kind of determine what you want to work on, or, what you do want to trust and listen to. And so I think, it's like you need to trust that your mentor is saying maybe this harsh piece of information, or like this piece that you need to work on, because they want to see you grow. They want to see you succeed in the long run.
Has that happened to you?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like everybody, right? Like you get feedback from a variety of different places, and sometimes it's harsh. Yeah. And I remember it was in high school, actually.
Okay.
And I remember I got some feedback on, it was math, actually, as well. I was always okay in math, but I wasn't great. And I remember, talking to my college or high school counselor saying, I'm thinking about engineering. I'm not super sure. And she, kind of looked at me and she was like, I don't know if engineering is for you. And I remember taking that really personally. And I was like, ouch, like, okay, maybe, I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe I should be doing something else. But again, it's up to you to kind of realize, okay, I'm getting this information. What am I going to do with it? Am I going to trust this, or am I going to trust myself that I can do this? And maybe that's when you lean on another mentor in your life who has that belief in you, who can cheer you on.
So what did you do? What made you realize, no, I can do that path if I want to?
So I remember I talked to my mom and we had a really good conversation, and she was like, like screw that person. Right? Excuse my language, but like you can do this, and it's up to you to decide what you're capable of, not somebody who maybe doesn't know you as well.
There's an unlimited amount of just advice out there.
Absolutely.
And there's a much smaller amount of helpful advice.
Yes.
Totally true.
Well, and especially like whoever told you that, like they were talking about that probably earnestly from their perspective. Like I've had that happen where people have given me advice that is advice for them, but it's just advice that wouldn't work for me, because like I'm not them and I just tackle things a different way. I've heard that all the time. So you really have to correctly, I think, if someone's a mentor, you need to make sure that they're giving you advice for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And that they're understanding, like, this is how Claire is going to best be able to, like, maybe not how I would tackle it, but you will tackle it much better with this context. I think that's a big part of being a good mentor, is like, if you as the mentor can, understand the person that you're talking to and what would help them, and not just say, this is what I would do.
Absolutely. And sometimes I think some of these harder conversations, or maybe these mentors who aren't as good early on in your life, help you grow into the mentor that you want to be for other people. I remember that conversation that I had with that counselor so vividly, right? I think it kind of sticks with you. And then when it was my turn in college to mentor some younger, underclassmen that were just starting out in their school career and maybe were also struggling in math or with some classes and they couldn't, believe in themselves. I remember that conversation, and it's so important to uplift people and tell them that they can do it when they maybe think that they can't.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love about that little story and a takeaway that I have from that? So many of the conversations that I've had with mentors are about how they didn't have a mentor early in their career, and they didn't have that example of what it should be to be a mentor. And so I've found the resounding realization within the mentor community of, I'm going to be the mentor I wish I had, or I never had. And of course, there are a few that I've talked to that did have that mentor and had that great relationship, but there are so many people in this generation that I've been talking to that didn't have that. Right. And so they take this vision of, what would I have needed? Yes. And they turn that into their goal for being a mentor, which I think is very admirable. Yeah. And I think is an interesting takeaway as we form more of these mentor-protege relationships, to realize that both sides are imperfect, right? Nobody's going to know exactly how to do what they need to do, but as long as both people come to the table willing and with a genuine appreciation for the other person, we can find our way to the other side. Just realizing they might not be perfect, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, in a situation, like how do you handle a situation where maybe like your protege requires a different set or a different approach than is kind of your primary way? Like if somebody needed something from a mentor that isn't how you prefer to mentor, how do you handle that?
I mean, first of all, I always like to challenge myself. So I like to see if I can build the skills that I need to help somebody. But there have been situations where, like, for example, we don't communicate the same way. And I feel like I'm not getting through to the person in a way that's helpful for them receiving it. There have been times where I've said, I know somebody who communicates like this. I think you guys should sit down and have lunch. And it almost always works out. Like, being able to acknowledge where I am strong with somebody and maybe where I'm not, because I can't help everyone, and that's okay. Right. But somebody else can, and they're going to help them in a way that is received well by that other person. So I think it's fine to help cultivate relationships between other people if there's some sort of gap that you're not able to overcome as a match.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's natural, right, to really want to help everybody in your life, but, like you were saying, Emily, like, people have different communication styles, and that's completely okay. But it's like any other type of relationship in your life. Like, sometimes you just won't mesh with someone, and that's okay. Instead of maybe trying to keep forcing it, it's okay to maybe find someone else who would be a better match for that protege.
Have you found that there's, differences in life experiences that have been, something that is either challenging or like surprisingly, like a surprising amount of like alignment with them?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been in some situations where people have had a totally different life experience than me, and I can empathize with them, but I can't always know what that was like when you talk to people who come from a really different community than you did.
Right.
I can empathize with them. I can help them grow in ways that they want to, but I might not always be able to really understand what that means to their growth in their career, to their growth as a person. So I think it is important to realize when somebody else may have a better match that can really relate to them and understand them and help them navigate waters that maybe I could never navigate. And that's just a wonderful gift to give that other person, to make those connections to somebody that's really going to give them what they might need.
Yeah, totally.
And then just in closing, I'm curious if you could go back in time and change one aspect of, a mentorship relationship, whether you're the mentor, the protege, et cetera, how would you kind of change the way that you tackle mentorship? And since we started with Emily, we'll start with Claire at the end.
So that's a great question. I think back to college me back in the day. I was a part of this mentorship program that matched me with a young professional in the field, which was awesome. It was a super cool program. I remember I think I was a junior, senior in college, so just about to enter the workforce and graduate, and I was super excited. And I was paired with this mentor who, funnily enough, like, we are really good friends right now to this day, but she was at a point in her life where she couldn't be the mentor I needed her to be. She had just moved to a new city. She had just started a new job, and she just did not have the time to put into, mentoring me and being willing to have those conversations. And I think, and we've had a lot of conversations since then because we were on the same kickball team, funnily enough. But, she told me, she's like, I'm so sorry that I was not in a point in my life where I could give you that type of relationship and that type of mentorship that you needed. And I think what I'd say is just that's okay. Yeah. I think sometimes we really want a relationship to work out. We see this person that is awesome and cool and thriving in their field, and we want to learn from them and grow from them. But it's okay that sometimes a relationship just doesn't work out. And, since then, right, like I've found all of these other wonderful mentors, and, we still have a great relationship or friendship today. It's just at that time, I think it was okay to maybe step back and be like, we're both really busy. It's okay. Like, we wanted this to work out. We wanted us to meet more regularly, but it's okay. We can't force it sometimes.
I love that. That's great advice. I think for me, there's two things I would say. And the first is I would encourage my younger self to be more brave. So as I had mentioned with the Cast Film Mentor Protege program, I had tried to get it kicked off once before and come into some obstacles along the way.
Right.
And I really believe if I had stood more firmly, I could have made it happen. Which it wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to go the way it went, and I've met wonderful Claire here and some wonderful other people. But if I had been more brave and stood my ground, I could have made it happen. So I think that's one thing in this mentor protege journey that I've learned is be more brave. The other one is, I think what Claire and I have realized is it doesn't have to be perfect to try it.
Yes.
So we went into this journey not exactly knowing what we were going to do, and we've had great feedback. Our mentors and proteges have given us wonderful feedback moving forward. But, I think people try too hard to make it perfect before they go on a journey of some kind. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Just start somewhere and fix along the way or make changes along the way. What about you, Drew?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think that I would have, we kind of talked about this before, but like I kind of gravitate towards, mentors that hold me accountable and that push me pretty hard. And I think I would have, if I could have realized that sooner, like understood like what it is that I need out of a mentor, because I found plenty of people who were, more than happy to, fill that role, but kind of like on the flip side of what we were talking about earlier of like, stylistically we didn't match up, and I kind of wasn't getting what I needed out of it, and then when I found it, I was like, oh, these are the relationships that really help me. And so I think I would have challenged myself earlier. I would have pushed myself to find people and tell them, just face to face, like, I need you to, I don't need you to be on my case all the time, but I need you to make sure that I'm not, I'm keeping going and I'm not falling behind, and I'm always pressing forward. I would have challenged myself to take that on, even though it's, no one ever wants to go to someone and be like, make my life harder. But I would have tried to find that balance earlier.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Pay attention to what's making you tick. What is making you feel maybe not so great, so that you can help people understand what it is that you need.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Like if we spent more time doing that when we're younger, what do I really need? Imagine how much easier things would be.
So much easier. All right. Well, thank you again for your time. Again, Claire Paschke and Emily Villines, and this has been the LCAC Mentorship Podcast.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.